Hello and welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey. My name is Art and we are exploring my bookshelves. Today I'm doing the Reader's Problem tag. I was tagged by Becky at Teacup the Storyteller's YouTube channel, and I'll make sure to link her video and channel down below. It's a wonderful channel, one of my favorites, and I hardly ever miss one of her videos. So I'd encourage you to check out that channel. So this is a fun tag. This is one of those tags that I really enjoy watching, where you get to learn a bit about the person, how they read, what they read, things like that. So let's dive in. Question 1. You have 20,000 books on your TBR. How in the world do you decide what to read next? My goodness, 20,000 books on my TBR. That's about right for me. I keep a list of all the books I want to read. Especially if it's in a series, I'll put them up closer to the top. Some that I might want to remember later down the road, I'll put them down a little bit farther on my TBR list. But then I also have it organized according to genre, so I can pick better what mood I'm in to read. You know, what genre I'm looking to read. And then I basically, for right now, I just go through what's next on the list. Once in a while, I'll find something new that I think I really want to get to, and I'll just have that jump the list. So it's kind of a mixture of being an organized list booktuber or an organized list reader, and some kind of just chaotic read what I want mood reader. But lately, the last couple of years, I've been reading pretty consistently in order from my TBR list. That's an actual list. I love stats. I love spreadsheets and organizing everything. It's great fun. But then, I end up just reading what I want, and I really enjoy that approach. Question 2, you're halfway through a book and you're just not loving it. Do you quit or are you committed? I always used to finish every single book I ever started, even if I hated it. And that would be, sometimes I would just drag on the reading of this book would just take forever to get through because I hated it. And it would have to be a pretty bad book for me to DNF. But then I finally, especially when I started watching booktube videos, almost like you need permission to say, it's okay if I don't want to read this book. Nobody who's a good friend or a nice person is going to condemn me because I, DNF'd Mark Twain, So now I'm a passionate DNFer. If that book, I try to give it at least a quarter of the way through the book. And if at that point it's not capturing my attention, I let it go. Overall, I haven't made any decisions that I've come to regret, and I've got so many more wonderful books to get to that I'm pretty set. I know my taste well enough by now. I'm pretty good at guessing, even from just the book description, that this is going to be a book that I like or not. But mostly it comes down to I already kind of know myself so well, so I am able to pick books that I can get through. Question 3. The end of the year is coming and you're so close, but so far away on your Goodreads reading challenge. Do you try to catch up, and how? I don't. I'm usually ahead on my Goodreads challenge. I think I set every year at just 100 books, and I adjust that as needed, which makes you wonder, well, why have one anyway? But I like the chart. You see the little line going across, how many percentage of your goal you've met in the year. And I just love that. So even though I might not read 100 books in a year, which I've been able to do, the last 5 or 6 years for sure. And I'll just, if it looks like I'm going to hit 95 instead of 100, I'll just back my goal up to 95 and call it good. I'm not too tied into it, and I don't let it stress me out. And that's also something I've gotten better at over the years. When I first really became an avid reader in my adult life, I began to have these challenges like, oh, I want to read 50 books this year, and then, oh, I want to read 75, and it was kind of a panic. But now I've gotten used to that. It's just become more of a way I can watch another chart progress my life through the year. Question 4. The covers of a series you love do not match. How do you deal? Not well. I don't know. I throw temper tantrums. I scream and kick, throw my coffee across the room. I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't bother me so much. Some of the series I have collected they all match. So, and I know I've got some that don't, like my Louise Penny's series of books. Some I have bought brand new with a dust jacket on. A couple I've gotten that are missing a dust jacket or are in paperback and versus hardback, and it doesn't really bother me. I like more of the story versus what it looks like. And these are not books that are on display. They're just on my bookshelf in our bedroom. So nobody but my wife and I are really going to see it and be bothered by it. But yeah, that doesn't bother me too much. Question 5. Everyone and their mother loves a book you really don't like. Who do you bond with over shared feelings? Well, that's the joy of booktube, right? Is that as much as everyone seems to love this one book, I can usually find somebody else who doesn't like that book. Conversely, it can be the other way around too, is that everyone hates something, but then you're the lone one who kind of likes it. I just really recently saw that with that adaptation that shall not be named on Netflix based on a beloved Jane Austen work. If you know, you know. That seemed like, everyone like myself even did not care for it. But then a few people commented about how much they actually did like it and not just hate on them for liking something that I didn't care for. And I tried to be try to discuss with them what it was that they liked about it and different things. And that was fun. But yeah, I don't know. Usually if it's a book I don't like, I can find somebody to talk to about it and we can just express, unity over a book that everyone seems to like, but it's just kind of meh. You're reading a book and you are about to start crying in public. How do you deal? I don't know if I've had that ever happen before. Sometimes, I'll be reading at home and that can start happening. And when I was reading aloud to my children, one of the books that was so hard to get through, there was two. One was in the Harry Potter series in book 7. There were, and parts of book 4 and 5 and 6 were really hard to read. And my boys, I read them aloud to my boys when they were younger, and they'd be like, Dad, are you crying? No, nope, not me. No, I'm not crying. No way. Anyway, yeah. The other one was Lord of the Rings, especially towards the end of Frodo and Sam's journey. The character of Samwise is one of my favorite characters in all of literature, and just what he does to help Frodo with his burden, it just gets me. Both the movie version and the book version are so well done that, boy, I cry. I cry. And I'm still mad that Sean Astin got no award recognition for that role. Very, very little, which is not right. He should have had an Academy Award for that role. But if this were a perfect world, my walls would be bookshelves. Question 7. A sequel of a book you loved just came out, but you've forgotten a lot from the prior novel. Will you reread the book, skip the sequel, try to find a synopsis on Goodreads, cry in frustration? Yes, exactly. All of those things. I have had this happen before, especially with like the Harry Dresden series I'm reading. I have reread through the series at least a couple of times if it's been a long gap in between the novels. But if it's like a trilogy, I might do a reread as well, depending on how long I take to read in between books. Even for like a 3-part, even for a trilogy, I can't read them right after another. I need some time in between, even if it leaves off on a cliffhanger. I kind of enjoy that sensation of waiting to find out what happens next. We live in a world where it's almost like instant gratification, with, when they release TV shows on streaming networks, a lot of them will just release the whole season at once and you can binge watch, which I don't tend to do, but I like being able to watch them whenever I want to. But, I come back, I grew up in the age where you had to wait for 7 days before the next episode came out. And then it might be a rerun, which was the worst, that now I have to wait another week to get a new adventure of my favorite TV show and all that. It was just awful. But sometimes I like reminding myself that it's okay to wait and breathe in between different episodes or different books, different parts in a trilogy or a series. So, I've been reading the Three Pines series probably, boy, it's been more than 10 years, I think. that I've been a fan of Louise Penny's work. And yeah, it has been. Wow. And I still haven't caught up with all the books she has published because I like to read maybe just two, maybe three books in the space of a year that's set in a series like that. So I definitely don't binge read. You do not want anyone borrowing your books. How do you politely tell people nope when they ask? Wow. I haven't really had anyone ask to borrow a book, except for my wife, which I grudgingly give to her, but for the sake of our marriage, I have to. I think it was in our wedding vows. I'm not sure. I know my kids have asked to borrow a book, not very often, but I have seen what kind of chaotic evil they rain upon books and how they use and how they don't use bookmarks. They fold pages. They leave it flat open. They've used a book as a bookmark before. I if it's a special book, I'll tell them no. That's a special book. But I did actually get a couple of extra copies of books like the Potter series and in Lord of the Rings. So it's like, okay, here's the version you can read. I'm a little less controlling about it now as now that they're older, and I know they can more or less properly take care of a book. But I've been known to, oh yeah, let's go get that book from the library when I have it on my shelf, or here, let me just download it to your Kindle. You can have it on your Kindle, and kind of skirt the issue, or get around that somehow. So yeah, I don't lend my books out. I would just straight up tell them, sorry, I'd rather buy somebody the book than give it to them to read. Even, my wife is probably not watching this, but if I had my way, I would even buy her own copy of a book just so she could have her own, because that's just kind of how controlling I can be over my most prized possessions. I'm kind of like a dragon on a hoard of gold, but it's books instead. I guess that would make me a bookworm. Hey! All right. Dad jokes aside. Question 9. Reading ADD. You've picked up and put down 5 books in the last month. How do you get over your reading slump? Good question. I think I've been able to avoid reading slumps for the most part, in that I usually have about 4 or 5 books going at one time. So if one seems kind of boring, I'll jump to another one, read that for a while, then jump to another one, read that for a while, come back to the first one and read that. And that kind of keeps things fresh. Although sometimes I get adding too many to the pile. I think the worst I've ever done, or the best, depending on who you ask, I was reading about, this is almost embarrassing, but I was reading about 10 books at once. Time for some confession here. And I don't know, maybe I just wasn't in the mood to focus on any one thing. And sometimes when I start adding too many books to the pile, I'll have to, take a step back and say, okay, let's knock some of these out so I can get on. It's because I got too many storylines in my head right now. Question 10. There are so many new books coming out that you're dying to read. How many do you actually buy? I don't actually buy a lot of new books. I know I love authors and I want to support their work, but I run on a tight budget too, and that's part of why I like having my podcast, because I can help get the word out about books, especially books that maybe I can't afford to buy. I can help encourage the author, get the word out about their books, and people can get to know them. So I will use the library quite a bit. I really limit myself to buy either, if it's an author's back catalog, I will very likely just buy them used. And you can do that even on places like bookshop.org or .com, whatever it is. And help support local bookstores. There's a handful of authors that I will always buy, even if it's new. Authors like Louise Penny, Ray Bradbury when he was alive and still publishing books. Jim Butcher, his books come out, it's an immediate buy. If the books I got from the library were books I actually bought, I would probably be in I'd be homeless. And then question 11, after you've bought the new books you can't wait to get to, how long do they sit on your shelf before you get to them? Well, that depends on the kind of book it is. If it's in a series, I'll just wait until I get to that point in the series. If it's one of my favorite authors, again, I've got a TBR list that I'm reading through. It'll go on my list. I might move it up closer to the top or bottom, depending on how excited I am to read it. I have been known to buy a book and actually start reading it on the same day I bought it, but that's pretty rare. But yeah, once I get a book I'm wanting to collect and own, it goes on my TBR list just like any of the others do. But where it goes in on the list depends on how much I want to get to it and how soon I want to get to it. That is the Reader Problems tag. And again, I was tagged by Becky at Teacup the Storyteller. A wonderful channel. Make sure you check it out. So that will do it for me today. And until next time, take care and happy reading.